So, I mean, should Nigeria consider adopting compulsory voting laws as seen in countries like Australia, Belgium, and Brazil?
I mean, for me, my position will be a measure of um, a measure to sort of mandate some level of voting. I'm trying to not use the word compulsory and mandatory, but when you look at our trajectory as a people, turnout has been a problem. And when you have turnout problem, you solve it. And the way to solve it is not to become undemocratic, but to find incentives to make that work. So Nigeria will not be the first country to have some sort of mandatory voting, but I think where Nigerians disagree technically, it's about the punitive measures that are attached uh, to the conversation. So it's not technically that Nigerians reject compulsory mandatory voting, because again it's your civic right. It's what everybody should do. But of course, apathy is not a product of just nothing. It's a product of long-standing disenfranchisement, the violence that we experience in Nigerian elections, the fact that the electoral body is compromised, heavily compromised, the fact that the political parties control things that they should not control. So it is not happening in a vacuum. But should we go in the way of solving this problem by saying, look, Australia is doing it, Belgium is doing it, and every other, some other persons are doing it because, again, they're trying to fix a problem. I think we can go that direction, but not with the punitive measures. I am not one to say, oh, no, just leave it to everybody, because if we have more people participating and we know that we're responsible, I think the outcome might be different.
Okay, so some people are saying that instead of the punitive measures attached to these particular rules, so to speak, it should be incentivized. But then other people will argue that will result into what we have known as, a lot of us have come to understand as stomach infrastructure, and that might seem as though people's votes are being induced. How do we strike a balance to ensure that Nigerians are encouraged to vote without any form of encumbrance?
I mean, incentives don't have to be money, and I think we have to understand what that means. Incentives don't have to be money. Incentives can be that if you're a consistent voter, you qualify for certain kinds of government loans or government programs or government support, or we can work with the private sector to say, okay, part of what we're going to use as an underground way to screen people out when we're talking about jobs is, provide a voting history. When people don't have voting history, that may become something that we can quietly use as a way to weed off those who are civically active and those who are not. So let's say, just look at the voters card. People get their voters card. Why? Even though people say, oh, they don't trust the voting process, they get their voters card. Why? Because the voters card can be used as a relatable quantity when you are engaging with the bank or you're doing some other stuff. That's an incentive. But so at the end of the day, if we say, if you vote and we know that we can track the record and say that you voted, it means that you can get into certain programs a lot better. Incentivize the process. Don't punish it. Should it be mandatory? I do think that, now look at it. We give birth to children and we mandate that they have certain vaccines. There are people who don't agree, or for religious purposes or whatever, and say we don't believe in these vaccines, but it is mandatory that you take these vaccines. That is how you think about public policy. People may not agree to it, but it is not the idea that you get punished for not participating. My take is this: if you have a 28% voter turnout and you have a dismal amount of performance at local government elections and even governorship elections and House of Rep elections, and people are not making these decisions on who become their president, their governors, their senators, then you don't have a democracy. I think the bill, which has just scaled second reading, is now been referred to the House Committee on Electoral Matters, would still go through a lot of refining. I think the 100,000 punishment is unnecessary. The jail term is unnecessary. I think that's a dictatorship. That shouldn't happen. But we have to incentivize the process and say that, okay, part of what we're doing is that we're going to ensure that because we now have a bill that mandates our voting and engagement, we must then ensure that the violence associated with elections are also addressed. Then you are incentivizing the process, right? So we say that if we find people who are committing violence during elections, we're going to so prosecute them that they will regret ever doing it. Then trust me, the young man, the old woman, the young, the old man, and every Nigerian of voting age would be ready to come out and vote. Because a lot of people will tell you, don't go and vote, because that may be the last time you fight. If that is the case, they don't have a case, but if they can incentivize it and make it safe, I think they're on the way to some good stuff.
All right, thank you so much, Godbless Otubure, for sharing your thoughts with us on the news.